But have you ever struggled to open a bank account for you or somebody in your family? Research by the Reserve Bank shows rules designed to stop money laundering, along with the withdrawal of physical branches, have made it harder for people to open bank accounts. It also found a third of frontline staff said they were unable to open a bank account for a customer either on a monthly or weekly basis. The main barriers were customers' due diligence requirements, which were used to meet money laundering, anti-money laundering laws, and the way those laws are implemented. Problems included also people who did not have a proof of address or photo identification, language barriers, or lack of access to a physical bank branch. Between June 2018 and June 2023, the number of bank branches decreased from 1,130 to 577 across the four main banks. Opening hours also dropped. Almost 2/3 of rural branches are open fewer than 35 hours a week, and 38% of urban branches. So the fewer branches, tough money laundering laws, strict identity rules, are banks making it too hard? With practical banking experience along with academic research, joining me now is Massey University Associate Professor Claire Matthews. Claire, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Leah.
Claire, I remember opening my first bank account, my mum did, and standing next to her, and we walked into the bank with my little book and a little deposit, put my pocket money in. I mean, those days are long gone, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when people would have cash to open a bank account to start with is one question. But As you've pointed out, it's hard to find a branch. The hours might not suit you. And there are much more rigorous requirements, information that you need to provide to be able to do that today.
So they listed things like recent migrants, people who don't speak English, amongst some of those that are having the most problems opening a bank account. Who else do you think in society are struggling?
It's really hard to know. I think those are probably the key ones, but anyone who has literacy or financial literacy issue is likely to struggle because they're going to just have a difficulty understanding what's required. I did have a quick look, to be honest, at the bank's websites just to see, how easy it is to find out what you need to do. And I'd have to say that I noticed that there's in the report some criticism about the banks making that clear. And having looked at the websites, as somebody who is financially literate, and has a reasonably good requirement, it's like, you could make it easier. Just tell me what I need to do rather than take me straight into the opening process. So I think there are some things the banks could do on their website as well. But for recent migrants, providing a service for that makes it clearer, there's certainly things that could be improved.
Yeah, because, and what are the main challenges for those that try to prove their identity to banks? Because I've heard from people that say that's a real, hoop jumper as well.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things is the address issue because they actually want to know what your residential address is. I saw on one of the bank's website that talks about your driver's license because you can put your address on your driver's license, but I really don't know how many people would actually do that. There's lots of reasons why you don't want to do that. And often you will be having your mail go to a post office box, so that's not going to demonstrate it. And if you're not in a situation where you've got, for example, a power bill or something like that in your name, then you're not going to have anything that shows your address. So I think that can be one of the biggest challenges. Again, I did notice on one of the bank's websites they have got options that would overcome that, but it's not necessarily easy to find that information to know that that's an option.
Because I think about, many young people, especially there's been problems with those that come out of, say, Oranga Tamariki. And, that's an issue where you've got young people that can't establish good banking practices early. What happens to them? They're kind of set up to fail.
They are. The reality is it's really hard to operate in the New Zealand economy if you don't have a bank account.
Yeah.
So there is, to an extent, a fundamental human right as a New Zealander to have a bank account so that you can operate. It doesn't necessarily need to be a fancy bank account. It might be a reasonably basic account. But there is something that's needed, and it's a matter of finding ways of doing that. It might be that there's a need for a service. So, for example, with Orangi Tamariki, that they make sure that when their clients, the young people, leave their care, that they set them up properly. But again, they may not have the time and resources to be able to do that.
Yeah. What does this all come down to though, Claire? Is it because it's a protection, it's for anti-laundering money? Why have they become so strict, or has it been like this and I've not noticed because I've had bank accounts for years?
Yeah, most of it is around anti-money laundering. So this is a government imposed effectively, in that the government has said, because they've signed up to the international conventions around this, around anti-money laundering and countering financing of terrorism legislation, which says that you've got to know who your customers are, and therefore you need to be able to identify them, and part of that is knowing where they live, etc. So there is a legal requirement on the banks to be able to do this, and they have actually tried to make it as easy as possible, but it's not necessarily that easy. No. I have to say though, I think we may also be overstating the problem. Well, not denying that it's a major problem for those people that have trouble. For the vast majority of people, it may be that they weren't able to open the bank account the first time they went in because they didn't completely understand what they needed. But they'll be able to go back and do it the next time. And most people will end up with the ability to open a bank account. It may just take a couple of attempts, and it just may not be straightforward. So it's unlikely that there are too many people that actually end up unbanked.
See, isn't that interesting? Because I was speaking with former MP Richard Prebble in the last hour, and he knew that I was talking to you, and he said, this really grinds my gears, Banks. I said, all right. And he said that he's got his grandson living with him, and when he went to get a bank account for his grandson, he said it took 4 months to open one, with the back and forth and the identities and this and ID and verification. He said it was just amazingly slow. But then he also claimed, Claire, that he reckons there's tens of thousands of Kiwis who don't have a bank account. Would that be correct? Do you think?
I think that's probably overstating it. I'm sure there are a reasonable number of people, but as I said earlier, I think it's really hard to operate in New Zealand if you don't have a bank account. So I think the vast majority of people will end up with a bank account. And some of those that are unbanked may simply be young people who don't actually need a bank account, but they will need to get it at some stage as they get older. The 4 months to open an account for his grandson seems incredible. So it's a matter of understanding, what was going on. And I think it is something that there needs to be a look at. Is there something that can be done to make it easier, so that when people have problems, they can find out what they need to do and get it sorted.
Can we talk branch closures? Decrease of 1130 down to 577. I mean, who do you think is impacted the most by closing branches?
The ones that are impacted the most are probably those in rural communities, because increasingly it's rural communities that don't have any bank at all within a short distance. If you're in a big city, so for example, in Palmerston North, where I am, one of the big banks has just announced that it's closing one of its branches, but there's another branch. It's a few minutes away, but that's not so bad. But if that was in a rural community, the next branch might be an hour away, so that's a big challenge. So rural communities, and also older people, particularly not just older people, but elderly, because they haven't grown up with internet. They haven't necessarily come to grips with it. And so trying to do everything online can be a bit of a challenge. And to an extent, they like the opportunity to go into the branch and talk to people, because they may not have that opportunity for other things that they're doing. So those would be the two main groups. With the, rural communities can do things online, but they often also face challenges around internet access, because their internet's not necessarily that good. So even though they might be able to, they know what they need to do, they just can't get online to be able to do it.